Children of God, Shem Hashem, Shem Yiddish, Torah, I told everyone to try to share from our Yaakov Ministry that great source of sponsoring share called Yiddish Torah at 718-851-8651 on email, isd@yeshiva.com. They share sponsored by Hashem's time dealer. They share from Smooth and Aldina Satan and Tools for Shama, the Gabi, to Shnavala, and Bora, insects from Shabbos Yom Tov.
Common question. There's a slug, very unsightly insect. You're allowed to move it, you're allowed to trap it, if there's bees that are disturbing. And we had a few shilas over the summer regarding Seder. Certain camp, they had like a small petting farm that small animals. The question was, if it's Seder regarding these animals that are raised in the campgrounds. We had a shot about the turtle that was walking on the campground. They let it trap it. Just say on the turtle. When we have chickens in our camp, there's a problem with Seder. And we see the sugya of Seder, which is grounded both on Shabbos and Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, there's no head of Seder. It's timely. It's negated for Sukkot. It's really negated for the whole year. And here we'll see again, as we always do, the really shame head of Torah, because we have many different shilas, as we'll see, groups of shilas. But I think we can resolve them all by posing a very simple question. It's not my Hakira, but Chazon Ish basically once mentioned it. But really, the question is very simple. How do we halachically define the Issa of Seder? I'll give you two choices. We always type Seder, you trap the animal, you confine the animal. You take away the animal's freedom. You put the animal in a cage. It's deprived of freedom. See, the worst thing about being in jail, you're not free. So Seder will touch as confining, to taking away the chayros. But maybe it's more to it. Maybe Seder really is when you capture it. You gain control. You gain shlita. Now shlita, of course, with a hay means control. So is Seder merely taking away its freedom, concerns of chayros? Or is it more than that? Is it actually you gain shlita, you gain control, you capture it? You wonder what's the nafkamina? I'll sit back and enjoy the rest of the shir. But I'll give you one nafkamina for now. Let's say you have a beautiful bird flies into your bungalow, and you love to have it as a pet. It's a free pet. But you're not allowed to trap on Shabbos, especially if you want to use it. This is the lachas yichulagufa. So you have a good idea. You'll close all the windows and all the doors in the bungalow, and you'll make sure that it doesn't escape. After Shabbos, you'll bring a net and you'll catch it. Is that an Issa of Seder? You definitely confined it. You definitely deprived it of its freedom. It can't fly out of the bungalow. But you have no shlita over it. You have no control over it. That's enough for me. What's the Issa of Seder? Listen to a beautiful tour that has a big impact on our Sukkah. Our Sukkah today is Shin Tezayit, and the tour quotes from the Baal HaTshuvah, Sefer HaTshuvah, She'asa lino b'Shabbos tei b'sheyesh b'zvuga. If you have a box, so let's see a garbage can, and there are certainly flies in it, Zok the Sefer HaTshuvah, you can't cover the box or the garbage can, but you're trapping the flies. So the Sefer HaTshuvah adds, but the answer would be, if before you cover it, put something in between the can and the cover, which really leaves an escape route. So you put there full before the makkah. Before you cover the box or the garbage can, leave an area and the flies can escape. Of course, the understanding is it's not necessary that the flies can escape. But the whole point is interesting. The Truma says it's also to cover a can or a box that there are flies in it. Fred the tour, I don't understand. Because even when you cover the can, you didn't trap the flies. Variety, you pick up the cover and the flies will fly away. So that's not Seder. So you have a fundamental machlokes about a simple question. Covering a garbage can that has flies in it, Sefer HaTshuvah holds is also, and the Torah says is mutter. Zok Hegel Chazon Ish in Nun Beis Yikon Tezvav. What's shot in the Torah? They push it. So like Nikmi say the Elokishachnisam Tachas Yode V'Yachal Nishleik Behem. The Issa of Tzeit is not just confining it, depriving it of its freedom. The Issa is gaining control. And a fly in a can, in a box, you don't have any control. There's no shlita. Zokti Chazinish Vaita. And the Sefer Trumas probably held that just the fact you take away from its freedom, that's enough of an Issa. Maybe Taka the Chazinish, maybe Taka the Sefer Trumas holds, that's enough of a shlita. You have it in the area, you could eventually catch it. But here we see our question is actually a machlokes b'shayim. Is it enough that you deprive its freedom? Or say the only shot when you gain control, you gain shlita? How do we paskin in this very crucial machlokes? So the Beis Yosef says, even though we have kasha on the Sefer Trumas, you can't ignore such a chiddush. Liyekul roishai, who can ignore the Sefer Trumas? In Shulchan Aruch and our Simon, he makes no mention of his machlokes, but the Ramah in Siv Gimel says the following: Yeshli Zoher, be careful not to cover a box that has flies in it. And that's a very mild lashon. The Truma says it's asa, and the Ramah says Yeshli Zoher. Obviously, the Ramah is not fully endorsing the Sefer Trumas, the Sefer Trumas. He's not saying it's asa, because he then says V'yesh Makilim, and that's the sheet of the Torah. So we have our question. The Mechaba Beis Yosef actually is Choishish, but the Ramah has a mild endorsement. Yeshli Zoher, you should be careful. Comes again the Magen Avraham Sivkot and Zayin, and says the only machlokes is by a small box, where the way Master Shekel explained, if you would be in the box, you could catch the fly. The problem is you open it, the fly's out. But let's say it's a big box. A big box, all agree, is mutter. Now, what's the shot? A big box is mutter. Once again, you're depriving it of its freedom. You're definitely taking away its chayris. The teretz is, if there's no shlita, there's no issa. So here we see, we're pretty comfortable to say that the issa of tzeda is not just depriving its freedom, but gaining control. And I'll give you a few examples to whet your appetite. Let's say you have a animal, bird, or an animal in a pretty big area. In Sifkat Nun Ches, you're now allowed to move it from the big area to a small area. Because when it's in the small area, it's considered trapping it. Now the kasha is, but even in the big area, it wasn't free to roam. The teretz the Mishnah Berurah held that the fact that it's confined and it doesn't have chayros is not yet tzeda. When you get it into a small area that you have control over it, that's the yis of tzeda. The Shmir Shabbos, Shlomo Zalman, Chav Zayin, Kuf Chav Gimel, has an opposite mashal. Let's say you have a big corral, we have the horses, a huge area. And of course, it's not tzeda in that area. The horse runs around. We'll soon see that probably horses, domesticated horses, always said tzeda. But let's say there would be a problem of tzeda with this particular horse. And you decide you want to move a movable wall, and now you confine the animal to a smaller area, but it's still not yet small enough to be considered tzeda. So you basically you chopped in half the area where the horse was. You limited its confinement, but it's still not yet trapped. That's mutter. If you don't have a shlita, there's no issa. But I'll give you a much more common mashal. Let's say, and this happens quite often in the yeshiva, in the camp, I'm saying in a bungalow, it happens that a big bird, a decent-sized bird, flies into a bungalow or a besmedish, and the truth is the bird is scared, and people are more scared because the bird is flying around, very nervously. So it's in a bungalow, and the family is afraid to go into the bungalow. There's a bird flying around. But your mazla goes into a side room, so you want to quickly close the door of the side room and keep the door closed until after Shabbos. At least you can use the rest of the bungalow. You can't have a bird flying around your bungalow. Is it mutter to close the bird and lock the bird into the back room? The answer is you didn't yet make tzeda. Because in the back room, it's not a small, tiny room. You don't have it in the back room. So what you do, you brought it from a big area, to a small area. But both areas, you have no shlita. And the chayra, that would be mut. Now, let me tell you one more halacha l'maisa to prove our point, and then we'll apply it more specifically. We'll soon see the details, but that's clear. The Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Montez, based on Rishonim, if you have a fully domesticated animal, for example, you have a cow on your farm, you ever live from a kibbutz or in a farm in the mountains, you have a cow that lives on your farm, fully domesticated, it doesn't run away at night. And let's say it's roaming in the fields, you're allowed to, on Shabbos, move it. Of course, there's a problem of books, so don't forget. But if, let's say you don't touch it b'yadayim, you move it b'gufay, you're allowed to move it from the big open field into its stable and close the door, lock the door. Let's say you're worried about someone is gonna abuse it. So you move the animal from the outdoors into a stable. Why? Because since it's fully domesticated, it's a b'nei tarbus. There's no issa tzeidah. Question is, why is there no issa tzeidah? You took it from an open field into a tiny little room. The teretz is, since it's fully domesticated, it's already that you have the shlita. It doesn't run away. It's the place use a lashon. It's nitzoid va'oimid. What does that mean? Nitzoid va'oimid. That means you have full control. Even if you don't touch it, it doesn't run away. So we see, even though you're confining it from a big area to a tiny area, as long as once you had shlita from the beginning, you're not gaining shlita, you always had shlita, there is no issa of tzeidah. So we're pretty comfortable to say that typically tzeidah involves both. You take away its freedom and you gain shlita. But the real issa tzeidah is when you gain the shlita on the animal. Now let us apply this to the numerous questions. And I'll start with unfortunately a pretty common shaila. It is a roach, and it's very troubling. The buyers are very worried about it. Is it mutter to trap it in a cup, run outside, and release it right away? You're making a ma'aseh tzeidah, but you're not keeping it. You're just getting it out of your house. So the truth is, unfortunately, it's not a heta. You did a ma'aseh tzeidah. It doesn't undo the issa when you release it. Person that builds and then destroys is no heta. I mean, it's a malachi on shvicha legufa because you're not using the trapped mouse, the trapped roach. But you look at the Mishnah Berurah Sifkat Lamed Vav and Lamed Zayin in both places, mashma. If you do a ma'aseh trapping, it doesn't help by releasing it. Once you trap it, that's the issa of tzeidah. Another point that might be more common, let's say there's a intimidating bee. So you're brave enough, you trap it in a cup, and you put a plate on top of the cup, but you leave a space that the bee could fly out. Would that be a heta? Because in this case, you didn't fully trap it, there's an escape route. So this is not my eitzah. This is the Sefer Trumas. Even the Sefer Trumas, that's machmer. But if there's an escape route, it's not a ma'aseh tzeidah. And basically, this is a heta. Be'alocha and Sif Aleph Kama says it's beferish, especially by the zvuvim, by non-ein mina nitzoid. But if you catch something and it could escape, it's not considered catching in the first place. Now, this is extremely negeya in the summer months, especially in the mountains, where typically there's at least a concern that in every garbage can there are flies. So the question is, are you allowed to cover the garbage can? There's flies inside, and you're trapping it. So if it's a suffix, if there are flies, so there's a famous machlokes, and our Simon, the Taz, and our Simon says it's only a suffix, so that's a stavashain mischaven and is mutter. You don't know if there's going to trap flies. You don't know if there's flies there. Kive'ega in Yeridea, Simon Pezai, and Simon Vav. So what do you mean it's a suffix? It's a suffix deraisa. Suffix is a tzeidah. Okay, by flies out of deraisa, but the suffix is a tzeidah. So that to be halacha by us discusses, because this is what's called psikration l'sha'ava. If there's a fly there, you're either going to trap it. If there's no fly, it's okay, but that's not a regular davashen miskaven. So that's a sugya for itself. But let's talk about a more troubling situation. Let's say you are certain there are flies in the garbage can. So it's not a suffix, it's a vaday. So like the tour, we have one heta.
Because even if you pick up the can, you didn't trap the fly. But we could do better than that. Let's say you want to be machmer. The Ramah says, yesh li zohar, you should honor the sheet of Sefer Trumas. So what's the simple eitzah? Leave the garbage cover partially open, the fly could escape, then you have a heta l'chol days. So loimi boy, by a suffix, by even a vadai, there's the eitzah of leaving it slightly open and the fly could escape. A person sees there's a bug on the table, roach, whatever it may be, and he, of course, say there will soon see the problem. So he puts down a plate, disposable plate, of course, and his mazel, the roach goes onto the plate. So he quickly picks it up, runs out, and throws it out of the sukkah. At least you get it out of the sukkah. So is that seder? So the truth is, it's on the plate before you began. And what'd you do? Now, you picked it up, but then again, it has a lot of escape routes. I mean, it seems that these bugs know how to jump off without a parachute, and they survive. So you're running out with an open area. So you didn't do much. And that's not true. Whatever the situation was on the plate, nothing changed. And especially I saw in Rabbi Zev as the truth was in the back of Shalom Yehuda, Sivkot Lamed, he says especially a macaque, a roach is a graf shori, you have to get rid of it. So you can certainly rely on this heta, even if let's say you're worrying about muktzah, but graf shori is, the issa muktzah is suspended. Now what's a pretty common shaila, you spot a roach or a mouse in a cabinet under the sink. Now, that's a halbatzar. But if it gets into the house, forget it. All the people are very worried about that. So is it an eitzah to quickly close the door of the cabinet, and at least it won't come out? And after Shabbos, you'll worry about it then. So this is a beautiful nafkamina of our question, because you didn't trap it, you have no shlita, but you definitely confined it. You're taking away its chayros. Now it's stuck in the cabinet. So if it's a big cabinet, it's mutar l'chaladeis. If you have some holes in the cabinet, escape routes, it's also mutar. But let's say you don't have it, it's a small cabinet and there's no holes. So this is a yesh lizar of the Ramah. The Sefer Trumas is machmer. The Ramah says yesh lizar. So if someone feels that his Bnei Bayis will be uncomfortable, the whole Shabbos is the makam of tsar for the Bnei Bayis, that's a significant reason to overlook yesh lizar. Had it been asa mamish, so it's a problem. But again, the Ramah basically reduced it from an issa to yesh lizar. If it's a bigger area, then it's mutter even like the Sefer Trumas. Another common question, there's a menacing insect, a bee, a wasp, flying around in the house, the bungalow, and your mazla lands on the screen. So you want to quickly close the window, and effectively what you did was you trapped the wasp in between the window and the screen. Now you don't need the wasp, you don't want to trap the wasp, you want to keep it out of the house. But that's what you did. You ended up trapping it in a small area. No? Beautiful. That's mamish, an afkamina our shayla. Like the Sefer Trumas, it's awesome. And like the Ramah, if you can't trap it because you open the window, it flies away, it would be mutter. So this would be another yesh zohar of the Ramah. And tak avoid that. If it's possible, before you quickly slam the window closed, open the screen a little bit, that's okay. If you have holes in your screens, I guess that's the Sabbath mode for screens, perfect heta, a built-in heta, the fly could fly out, the wasp could fly out through the hole, and that would be mutter even like the Sefer Trumas. So really it's all the same yesod. Now let's say a person doesn't want to trap the insect that's on the screen, but he wants to close the window because either it's cold or it's hot and the air conditioning's on. If he's doing it for other reasons, then you have another heta, you're not even trying to be mechaben at all to the insects. Someone asked me, he saw a roach running around. Of course, you can't trap it on Shabbos, but he wants to put a big box on it, and there's enough air that it won't die as it is. The ma'ila is you'll keep it contained till after Shabbos. That's another example of our shayla. You pick up the box and it runs away, like the Torah, it's perfectly mutter. You didn't gain shlita. Like the Sefer Trumas is a problem. So again, you have to know that's a yesh lizar of our Rambam. Now, this person asked me when he threw the lamda shashayla, enachanami in the box, I have no shlita. But if I crush the box, then I have it. It's right there. I told him, but that's not true because the Sefer Truma says you're allowed to catch the fly in a box and then leave the cover slightly open. You can easily close it. The teretz is, migu is good for bava kama. Migu you could do it, but if you don't do it, it's mutter. Here also, as long as you keep it in a big box, you have the Yeshlizar of the Ramah, and again, it's not the Chatchila, but if no other Eitzah, there's what to be makel, keeping it in a big box. We mentioned that domesticated animals are mutter. Let me try to clarify that because today people have pets, dogs and cats, birds, chickens, and two summers ago now came to Bachim decided to have chickens running around. There was a question on Shabbos with Seder. So there's no doubt about it. Let me be very clear. People have sometimes, especially in the mountains, they have deer on their lawn or rabbits on the lawn. That is Seder Deraisa. Rabbits, and we'll soon see deers. Deer are the mina nitzayid. The fact that they come onto your lawn, there's no heter whatsoever. But I'm talking about domesticated animals, farm animals, cows, geese. A lot of camps now have these like small petting zoos. They have these small goats and lambs and other small animals. It keeps the kids busy. So the Shulchan Aruch in Sif Yud Beis says even chayis va'oifos and certainly behemois, if they are domesticated, they live on your grounds, on your farm, there's no Issa Tzeder. Now, of course, Mr. Brewer reminds us, animals are still muktzah, even if they're domesticated, so you can't move the animals, but there's no Tzeder. Let's say let's say it's about to rain and you're afraid that the goats is not good, you can't pick them up and put them into the area where they stay, but you're allowed to move it to the gufay and lock it up. Because even when it was roaming, it was nitzayid va'oimid, because it's domesticated. And the word is b'nei tarbus, Mr. Brewer says. Tarbus as in morus as in shlita. You had the shlita before you locked it up in that small area. The key word Mr. Brewer uses is nitzayid va'oimid. Domesticated animals are already trapped before you start. Now, the only point that I must mention is Shulchan Aruch cautions, but let's say the animals are rebelling, they're in a rebellious state. So at that point, there's a problem of tzeidah, because right now they are not b'makabel moros. But let's say you have a calm animal, it's nitzayid va'oimid and it's mut. The Ramah is not happy, and the Ramah says a behema, a cow, a horse, a goat, they are real, we'll call them fully domesticated. They don't run away, they don't give you a hard time. But says the Ramah that chayis va'oifos, and a good example would be chickens. I observed the chickens one summer. They are not makabel moros. By day they run around. Now at night they come back because they have nobody else to go. But by day they roam and you try to get them, they run away. So that's what we're going to refer to as semi-domesticated. Chickens, chayis, we'll soon see about cats and dogs. But the chayis and oifis are only semi-domesticated, and there's this Rabbanan. But the Mr. Brewer spells out in Sifkat Nun Tes, quoting Magen Avram, Gra, and other Achrayim, but a para, a cow, a sus, a chamor, and other big animals who are fully domesticated, there is no Issat Seder whatsoever. So you can have a cow that's out in the big pasture, you want to get it into its stall, so you're allowed to move it, tilt the begufay, push it all the way from the open area into its tiny stall. There's no Issat Seder because it's nitzad va'oimid. And again, the Taz reminds us, don't forget about muktzah, but there's no Issat Seder. Now, this is very negay in Eretz Yisrael. We're from a kibbutz, people living on farms, and the distinction has to be made between chickens. Shulchan writes in Sif Lamed Zayin that many chickens are, especially if they're morodim, mishtagim, it's carved nisa deraisa, but tzarich lizav b'zeh ma'oid ma'oid. So chickens, and he speaks of it also about turkeys, it depending on that particular animal, that particular bird. But a big animal, unless it's moirid, there is no issa of tzeidah whatsoever. And the embassy, you see this reality. You go to Prospect Park for Chalamoid, you'll see geese walking around. They look pretty tame, but you go close to them, they run away. That's what we call semi-domesticated. They don't fly away, they don't escape, they're always there. But there's still an issue rabbanan if you trap them because they don't have them makabel that morris. Now, what I found interesting, let's talk about a cat. People have pets. Let's say you have a pet cat. So a stray cat, if I did a say, and as we'll soon see, a stray cat is yesh b'mine needs that people trap these things for pets. So conceivably, catching a stray cat is malacha d'oraisa of tzeder. Let's talk about a pet cat that a person has. So the Ramah in our sif, chasul dina kishar chaya v'asal tafsam b'shabbos. Now apparently, in those days they also had cats, especially they wanted to solve the mice problem. And the Ramah seems to classify a cat like a semi-domesticated animal, and there is seder midrabanan. Now that is very troubling. That means if you have a pet cat, according to the Ramah, and you want to close the door in a room, you have to make sure the cat is not there. Because sometimes by closing the door, you're doing a ma'aser tzeder. And the Ben Ish Chai in Shana Beis V'Eirehei spells out that if you have a pet cat, make sure that you don't be oiv on tzeder every Shabbos multiple times. Because closing a door could be the issue of tzeder. Now, the truth is today, especially people that have pet cats, we have a right to think that they are fully domesticated. You go over to them, they don't run away. And I found in one of the Heintic Islam, the Tyrus HaMalachos on the Kufay and Ches quotes of this in Karelitz that makes this distinction that if you have a pet cat that is fully domesticated, so it's not exeris of cats are also. The Ramah in his time, they didn't have pets. They barely had what to eat. They're not going to spend money feeding cats. They had these, semi-domesticated cats that were there to, take care of the mice. But he says a cat of today is as a pet is fully domesticated. Now the Yemis Mishnah already writes, it depends on the nature of that particular chaya. So it makes sense that cats of today, if you have a pet and the mitzvah doesn't run away, so even though it's not a behema, it's a chaya, but it's still no issa tzeder. Dogs are the same basic yisoid. In America they say dogs are man's best friends. Now I have better friends than dogs, trust me, but that's indicative of the relationship. If a person has a pet dog and it doesn't run away, it's makabel morris. So as a Mr. Karel, it's talking that same sefer Kufay Nei writes that it's not, he says the min behema versus chaya, and some place can say a dog is considered a chaya, and they bring a raya from a Mishnah, Lagabi Tumah V'Tahara. He says, it's a siman v'loy siba. In other words, if you have a dog that's fully domesticated, so then there's no problem of tzeder. A dog is considered a chaya and not a behema. Let's make a chiluk. So his the deciding factor is the relationship you have with the dog. And if the dog is does not run away, it would be considered like a fully domesticated dog, and there's no issa tzeder whatsoever. And again, this is very relieving those that have dogs. Otherwise, they would have, whenever they close the door in a room, they have to make sure the dog is not being trapped. Now, what's more pashut is a seeing eye dog that is trained since it's young to be makabel morris. It's there for the owner. That is a fully domesticated animal, and the bailam has no problem of tzeder. Now, the truth is, I'll tell you another interesting tidbit of information. We sit here talking about dogs and cats. We don't have pets. We don't have animals. It's just the hilchos of Mashiach. In Eretz Yisrael, there are hundreds of fruma farmers, and they have animals that they have to keep in cages. And what happens if the Shabbos or Yom Tov, they have to go and feed the animal or tend to the animal? Opening the doors is perfectly mutter. What's that to close the door of the cage? Closing the door is effectively trapping it. The door is open, they can escape. Now the door closes, it's trapping. So the Shmir Shabbos and Chav Zayin Lamed Ches says the wonderful eights would be to put a double door system. And many businesses have this today. You open one door, and you're in a corridor, in a hall. You can't open the second door until the first door locks. Now they do it for security. But you could do that in a farm. You open the first door, but there's still a second door. So it's basically not open. When you open the second door to get into the actual cage to feed or to tend to the animal, the first door's closed. So you never have an open door that takes away from the tzeder. So once it's nitzvah, there's no problem whatsoever. Of course, if you feed the animals through the cage without opening it, it's zichem mutter. But again, when people are, as the Geil HaMais, when people's daily Shabbat, weekly Shabbat size, the eighth would be a double door. Now, one thing I do want to mention, if you do have a pet, you have to learn halacha. Not just feeding the animal first, because the pasuk in the Sati Eis and then the Chalak Savata. But in Shabbos, it's a huge dilemma. I'll give you a simple much. The person has a pet bird. So again, I never had a pet bird, but I spoke to someone that does. Sometimes the bird, when it has an opportunity, will fly away forever. You ever see signs all over, missing parakeet, missing parrot, missing this? If the bird can escape, it will escape. That means that it's not a domesticated animal. So opening the cage is no problem, but closing it is a problem. Let's say you want to feed the bird. So you have to know how to do it. You open the door, and you keep the area blocked with your hand and feed it with the other hand. So it was never open. Okay, that's a good answer. But again, as the Ben Ish Chai writes, a person can have a pet cat and dog, and by closing the door of the house, it could be or the room, it could be a real tzeder. So if you want to have a pet, you have to first learn halacha to know how to do it. Children in the mountains, they catch, they call it frogs. That's seder. And if a frog is b'minei nitzai, and they're catching it to have a pet, that would be malacha d'oraisa. They're not catching it, they're trapping it. The frog is free to roam. You gain shlita by catching these frogs. It's a problem. Now, Salamanders will soon see the fact that it's slow motion, will soon see a possible hefty. But someone asked me, a person with great year shemayim, he has a friend that has a pet dog. And whenever he goes to the house, he wonders, does he have a problem? The owner has no problem. The dog is fully domesticated. But for me, the guest, I have no shaykhs to his dog. Maybe it's a tzeder for me. Forget about the owner. For me, I close the door. It's a problem of mine. So I looked into this, and Shmir Shabbos Chav Zayin Kuf Chav Dalet, he points to a bialoch and seafood base that once the animal is classified as fully domesticated, it's mutter even for guests. I guess the svara is once it's nitzad v'oimid, so your presence doesn't make anything different. Now it's not so excited about seeing you, but once it's nitzad v'oimid, it's in its habitat, it's in its place. There's no issa on anybody else. Rather, the Piskei Teshuvos in our 209 says he doesn't know why it's mutter, but I think we understand why it's mutter, because once it has that moros, it is nitzad v'oimid. Now, catching fish, obviously, is a real malacha d'oraisa of tzeder. You take a net, you grab a fish, that's yesh b'minei nitzad, as we'll soon see. And on Yom Tov, there's no heta, because even though many malachas are mutter on Yom Tov, but not tzeder. But let's say a person wants to have fresh fish on Yom Tov, there's a simple eitzah based on a Machab and Tov Tzadik Zayin Sif Hey. Before Yom Tov, catch your fish, put it in a small pool of water. So then, in the pool of water, it's already nitzad v'oimid, because you could grab it with your hand. So then, Yom Tov comes, grab the fish out, and you're going to have very fresh fish, eskes untehid. The point is, in a small body of water, the fish is nitzad v'oimid, it's already trapped. I wouldn't say ein tzad achatzad, because there's no tzad. Once it's trapped, it's trapped. The same is true for those that have fish tanks. Again, you have to know the size of the tank and the size of the fish. But taking a fish out of a fish tank, it's not domesticated, it runs away. So if you have to really go after it and you can't catch it as it is, that could be a problem of tzeder. But a small fish tank and the fish are easy to grab, it would be nitzad v'oimid. We had the shayla, someone asked me, one fish died in his fish tank. So what's the shayla? So apparently the fish that are healthy are affected by a dead fish. You want to take the fish out of the fish tank and put it in a different body of water. So the question is, again, it depends on the situation. If you could say it's considered nitzad v'oimid, no problem. If it's not a big fish tank, then you have a problem. Then you're taking it out, you're making from non-seder to seder. We had the shayla in the yeshiva. I give a shir, they have a big pond, pool of running water in the area in the backyard. And they keep goldfish, especially now this part of the year. And they took out the goldfish, they wanted to clean the pond. The kitzah, they put it into the sink in the dorm temporarily, and they forgot to put it back before Shabbos into the big pool of water. So they needed a sink, and they didn't want to have goldfish a whole Shabbos. So I told them, if Lamaisa, it's a small sink and the fish are pretty nice size, it's nitzad v'oimid. But you can't grab the fish with your hand, because that's muktzah. So you take the fish out from a cup from the sink, put it into the pool, and you can use your sink. The next group of questions regards mosquitoes, bees, wasps, roaches. So obviously, mosquitoes, bees, roaches are not domesticated, and we certainly don't want them to become comfortable in our house. So there's no heta of domesticated insects. But here we come to a big yisoid that has an impact on our sugya. The Gemara in Shabbos Kuv Vav Mebeis basically makes the chiluk that when is an issa say the midaraisa, only something b'minoi nitzai, which basically means something that is typically trapped. A deer is trapped for its meat, for its leather. Snakes are trapped for the leather. Many animals are trapped as a pet. Something that's typically trapped, b'minoi nitzai, is an issa deraisa. If it's not b'minoi nitzai, like insects, that's one of them Shalom the Gemara gives, then there's no issa deraisa. There's an issa derabanan because it looks too much like tzeidah. But as Mechaber says in Sif Gimel, if it's ein b'minoi nitzai, it's only an issa derabanan. Now, what I found mamish beautiful, the question is, what's the hezbollah of this? Why all of a sudden you're doing a malacha gemur of tzeidah because ein b'minoi nitzai, it's mutter min ha'torah. If a person kills that same insect on Shabbos, the Issa kills the Shama, so the Gemara says killing an insect is like killing a big animal. There's no heta aim b'min nitzai. Why punk by tzeidah is there a heta aim b'min nitzai? So listen to this. The Avnei Nezer in Kuf Pei Tes L'Tshuva Sif Cotton Gimel, Sif Cotton Zayin, asked this kasha. He said nearly that the reason is because every malacha on Shabbos, you make a change in the item. You cook something, you boira, toichen, losh. Every malacha, there's a change in the item. What change is there? You trap it there. Yes, you cut. What change? The deer isn't changed. Zok the Aveneza, there's something that's b'minei nitza, l'tzoyra gufay, chashed b'rishusay, sheyesh loy dov amar. Now you change the deer because now it's mine. I could make some venison meat, expensive meat. I could use a leather. And I saw the Sefer Klal Melech Shabbos Amid Shin Beis. From this we see that the Avineza held that the Issav Tzeidah is gaining Shlita. Now that you have it, it's a different chayv. It's not a roaming deer that's open wildly. Now you have an item of use. And now the deer, you can look at it like meat and leather. So the reason why it's an Issa Tzeidah is because you gain Shlita. So he would probably holds very similar to what the Chazon Ish said, that the Issa is gaining Shlita. That changed it from a roaming deer into an animal of great use. So I was thinking, Oy Bazoy is very posh. Killing an animal, the animal's dead, it's obviously different. You made a change in the chayfetz. That's why there's no qualification. The mina nitzid, not the mina nitzid. When it comes to the Issa of Tzeidah, what makes it an Issa is you grabbed it. You have a shlita. You have use of it. You have no use from an insect. What do you do with it? Get it out of your house? But it's the same insect. And that would be the hezbah in b'minei nitzid versus ein b'minei nitzid. But let's not forget, as the Shulchan Aruch spells out, even ein b'minei nitzid is still an issa d'Rabbanan. And now you'll understand the halacha in Sif Tes, which is extremely negeya. The Mechaber says if you have a flea, a gnat, an insect does not bite in a terrible way, but it's on your body, it's about to give you a little prick, you're not allowed to kill it, don't slam it, you're allowed to grab it and throw it off. Now, Manasha, you're worried about the bite, so why are you allowed to trap it but not kill it? Mr. Brewer explains beautifully, because if you trap this mosquito, at most it's an issa d'Rabbanan, because it's ein b'minei nitzid. Makam tsar, the Rabbanan will make it. But killing it, there's no heta of ein b'minei nitzid. So you're allowed to get it off, because it's a heta tsar by the Rabbanan. But to kill it is definitely awesome. So we see, if you have an item, an insect that bites, a mild bite, you'll soon see why I stress that. But the Mechaber's Lashon is a parash, a flea, a gnat, that makes a slight bite. And probably a mosquito, if you ever have a mosquito bite, some different meals you have until afterwards. But a mosquito bite also, if it's on you, you're allowed to grab it off, better to chew it off, but if you can't, grab it off and throw it away. But don't kill it. But if Siv Zion in the same our Simon, the Mechaber speaks about a snake that's about to bite or might bite. Now that's a serious bite. I'm not talking about a poisonous snake, even a non-poisonous snake. That you're allowed to be proactive and trap it, because it's going to give you might give you a serious bite. Mr. Brewer Sivkot and Chav Zayin explains it's a malachim tzricha legufa. You're not using the snake, even though snakes mean a nitzit, but you're allowed to trap it. But many of the poskim point out that it's lav dafka bite, a snake. Let's say you have a wasp, a hornet, and probably a bee also. It's more than just a little prick. It's a painful bite. There's a mokum tsar gadol. In a case of a tsar gadol, you're allowed to actually trap it. So basically, we have a gnat, a flea, a mosquito. If it's on your skin about to bite, you're allowed to trap it. But if there's a menacing wasp, hornet that could give a serious bite, and especially for some people who are allergic to a bite, it could be a serious problem. Or there are children in the area that are prone to get bitten. Any case where there's a chashash of a tsar gadol, you're allowed to actually trap it and get rid of it. It's a malachim tzricha legufa, which is mutter b'makom tsar. And we could add by hornets and wasps is aim min and itzad. So you have a double drabonon, you're allowed to trap it. Now you notice I said hornets and wasps are aim min and itzad. I would ask you an interesting question. What is the status of a bee? Is a bee aim min and itzad? So you have an additional hat that's only the rabbanon? So we could say, what I mean, bees. This time of the year, it's a chutzpah to say bees are aim min and itzad. We need the honey of bees. And people have bee farms. We buy honey from bee farms. But Mr. Brewer in Sivkot Yud quotes Shar Poisim, except for the Beis Yosef, all insist that a bee is aim min and itzad. Why? Very pashut. If you want honey and you keep the bee locked up in your closet, you're not going to have honey. You have to give them the freedom to be attracted to the pollen and create the honey. The way to have honey is let the bees be free. So therefore, a bee by definition is ein b'minay nitzah. Of course, we need them desperately, but we have to let them roam and have their freedom. So that's why basically, if there is a frightening bee that gives a decent, a big bite, the Rav says also that a bee is like the other type of tsar gadol. You're allowed to actually trap it. A question that I always wondered, if you have a bungalow, it happens, you hear a cricket making noise the whole night. It's going to disturb your whole night's sleep. But it's not threatening, it doesn't bother you. So Shabbos Chafei Chav Aleph says the heta is tsar gadol. Emotional disturbance is not a heta. You see the cricket, you can catch it, but there's no heta. Now, I'm not sure exactly why he writes that, but I saw this in Karel's and I say Torah's Malach is tough. Ahmed Kuf Samach Gimel, who discusses also this cricket, and he says emotional pain is also painful. It could be Mara B'chad of Olay Pligi. The person's in bed and he's up a whole night because of the cricket. The next morning he's going to be a Gavra Katila. Pashit. He can't sleep a whole night. They say that taking sleeping pills is a problem of a fool. But if he doesn't sleep a whole night and tomorrow he's going to be out of control, let him take it tonight before tomorrow he's an ice mensch. So it could be it's not a machlokes. If it's just disturbing, ignore it. Boil is daita. But if it's going to ruin your night's sleep, then tomorrow you're going to be a chayla, ain't by sakana. So take care of it tonight. Now, as far as bees, is there any other eights besides trapping it? So the belt says the eights is leave the honey out of the sukkah for a while, and they're attracted. Fine. Now, someone asks, but sometimes he notices that the bees end up in the honey, and you kill them, you trap them. That's the double shade of mischab. You're not trying to catch them. So you take the honey out. If it works, good. If there's no eitzah, you call a guy to trap the bees. Because since we said it's an aim b'min and nitzad, and also it's malachim tzricha legufa, malachim tsar, malachim tzayrich, you can't eat in the sukkah. You have shvus to shvus, actually 3 shvusim, b'malachim tzayrich. A bee trap is a very interesting design that the bee is able to fly in, but it can't figure out how to fly out. So this is a little of alumnus shashayla, because really there is a yitziyah, there is an escape route, but the bee, with its limited knowledge, can't figure out how to go out. So basically, it's not an escape route. I mean, the fact that it's disguised in a good way. So basically, a bee trap should be put out before Yom Tov. As we'll soon see, there's no Issa of Tzeda on Erev Yom Tov. Putting out a trap is mutter Erev Yom Tov. We have this trial, unfortunately, quite often in camp where there are ticks. I should mention ticks are a problem that could cause an infection that are really serious. It's not just in the mountains. In Lakewood and Muncie, there are ticks that are attracted to deer, and somehow they transmit a certain type of disease that could be very, dangerous. The kids, we tell the Bachim, check for ticks. If you see something, take it off. The problem is you find a tick on Shabbos. So a tick, of course, ain't in inside, but the problem is still the Rabbanan, taking it off. It sticks onto a person's skin. But here I think that the tick, by definition, is a nitzad v'oimed. The fact that I've done this more than once, taking off a tick is an avoid. You have to pull it off. It's mamash stuck on. So that's already nitzad v'oimed. There's a muktzah issue, so that's why you use a tweezer. You don't use your hand, of course. So it's the tiltil min atzad. It's you have to stay healthy. You might kill it. There's no head to killing it, but here's the catch. The way the doctors tells you how to do it is don't leave any part of it on your skin, because even part of it, especially the headpiece, could make the infection. You're supposed to do it carefully and slowly and take off the entire tick. You take off the entire tick, you're not going to kill it. You kill it inadvertently, that would be ein mischaven, and it's perfectly good. A beautiful yisoid that's really touched upon our sugi from a very exquisite direction. Let's say you have on your sukkah table, there's a slug or an ant. Is there tzeda by this very slow moving vehicle called a slug? It barely moves. We had a shayla this summer. The children love turtles, and they're very little turtles in my area at least. Punkt Shabbos, they saw a turtle walking around. Is there a head to catch a turtle? Because, in America, as slow as a turtle. Maybe a turtle needs to go before you start. Just like a domesticated animal is no tzeda, maybe a turtle is not domesticated. It's nitzad v'oimed. Take a look at a slug. It moves, I don't know if it ever moves. But maybe it's nitzad v'oimed. So what comes to mind is according to some Rishonim, what was the Issa Tzed in the Mishkan? They chopped the chilazon. The chilazon, according to some, was a snail. Now, there's an expression, slow as a snail also, right? It's also very slow. And yet the Rav and the Chashuch in the beginning of Shin Tezayin give a mashal of Tzeda Deraisa by a Chilazon. But the truth is not a raya, because the Chilazon in water you can't trap it. It swims quickly. So maybe Taki the Chilazon was trapped in water. V'oi, not all Paiskim, not all Rishonim hold that Chilazon is a snail. Some say it's type of a fish. So it's not a conclusive raya. But what seems to be a raya Brura is an extremely important Gemara. When you learn it with Afyam, you think, how's it Negeya? But it's extremely Negeya. Zov the Gemara Shabbos Kuv Beis. If you see a tzvi, a deer, that has seen better days, it's an ancient old tzvi that can't move, it's laying in the road, or it broke its foot. The kids are an immobile Zokin or Chayla tzvi. Now tzvi, a deer, is a malacha d'oraisa of tzeda. But this one can't move. It's lame. So if it's not moving, l'charish you wanted to pick it up. I mean, there's muktzah issue, but there's no tzeda. But says the Gemara pata, and frag the Gemara, why? Because Lamaisa, and that's where Rashi explains, it's still an Issa D'Rabbanan. Even though this particular deer, there's no tzeda because it's not moving, but there is a classic example of tzeda d'oraisa, Chazal Asid, a zaken v'choyla, or to a regular deer, that's a malacha d'oraisa. The Rambam, based on Yerushalmi, says lav dafka zaken. A baby deer that can't move, if it can't move, same thing. And this is the Shulchan Aruch seed base. We could say, so a slug is also. Why is Mr. Rabbanan just like a lame deer? Yet the Shlem Zalman Shmir Shabbos in Chav Zayin Kuf Nun Daled speaks about an ant, Nemola, and he says, since it's so easy to trap it, there's no Issa Tzeda by Nemola. And then he says a big chiddush, a tzav, which is Hebrew for turtle. There's no Issa Tzeda by a turtle. Now, the Hezbi says and this is in the print in the Shulchan Shleim and the Ha'ara too, that something that moves so slowly, it's not moleches machsheves. You don't need anything, any act to catch it. And below yishtadlus, it doesn't resist. There's no Issa Tzeda by a turtle or an ant, and certainly by a slug, it's even slower than an ant. The chiddush with this is that he's calling an ant a slug, a turtle, a nitzud v'oimed. The pella is that the Gemara does not say that. The Gemara seems to say by a zaken b'chayla of a deer, it's awesome. I guarantee you, if some Zalman didn't forget the Gemara, because he bavarns it in his words, and he says a zaken chayla of a deer, that by this type of min deer, this seder deraisa, chazal asur. But ants and slugs and maybe turtles that never asa, what's your problem? And I guess he meant is like domesticated animals that there's no issa. No one made exer on domesticated up to ain't domesticated. So it's interesting, so much action about this ant. So Rav Shlomo Zalman must have held it's nitzid v'oimet like a domesticated animal. And he quotes a proof because the Tila David and Shin Tazayin Yud Aleph says by lice there's no issa tzeder because it's so much doesn't move. Now we could argue very simply that lamaisa, when you imagine a child goes around catching ants and turtles and slugs, isn't that nira tzeder? If Chazal asked zokim b'chayla, why should they ask catching a turtle? Now that's a halbatzor. But the Psalm Zalman himself, this is the Shmir Shabbos, said someone showed me one of the Rishonim that says beforish, shrotzim going teilas hatzadam l'tzoyre chayiv. If you are going fishing on Sunday and you catch a teilas, a worm on Shabbos, it's a malacha deraisa. A worm barely moves, which is a big kasha on himself. And he admits that it's a problem. So that's why it's an issue that you have to really try to clarify. So Lamaisa, it's this question. I must tell you that I saw Rabbi Yashiv in Ashrei Ish Reish Samach Dalet. He says that he used to paskin that since the Ben Yerucham asas teilas, that means even a slow moving insect is asa, and therefore namala and the like is also asa. Vazlim the base Levi in Chaylevav Amenun also acid trapping ants. I guess the word is you're doing a Maisa Tzeder. Now, Lamaisa Rashi in Shvuas, this day in the bottom, Kuv Zayin Beis says Toilas is Shaykh Tzeder. Again, a worm is Shaykh Tzeder. So that's really why it's not so simple to be made even by an amola or a slug. But what's really sparked a great controversy, Rav Shlomo Zalman assumed that at Tzav, a turtle is no Issa Tzeder. It's a Ferish Mishnah in Kuv Zayin and Machab and Siv Ches. The Shmoyne Shrotz Amurim B'Torah is Seder Deraisa. And remember Parsha Shmini, one of the 8 Shrotzim in the Torah is Atzav. So Shlomo Zalman did not forget the Mishnah, and he writes, Rabin asked me this, and I feel I'm at stay, I didn't clarify, and he says the Tzav in the Torah is not the Tzav of modern Hebrew. The Tzav in the Torah, and Rashi Taki says this in one place, is more similar to a frog. That's Mechusat Seder. Modern Hebrew took the word Tzav in the Torah and made it like a turtle. Just like Nin v'Nechad al pi Torah, Nin is a son, and Nechad is an anical, they made Nin great-grandson. Botnim in the Torah is a nut, is a nut. They made bottom into peanuts, which is Adam, not 8. Okay, but it's inaccurate. So Shlomo Zalman insists that the tzav of the Torah is Seder Deraisa, but the tzav of the turtle is Takamut. Okay, that's his chiddush. And listen, Karel's in that Sefer Torah's Malach, it says that tzav is no different than the Heintik tzav, Yen tzav. But what bothered me a little bit with this tzav business is, first of all, there are big turtles that it's hot that do escape. Go to zoo, you find these big turtles. But more than that, when you put a turtle in water, it swims quickly. Maybe you determined nitzid v'oimid when it's in water, and which is not. Who told me that? He wasn't. So it's really hard. I'm not certain I'm going to be machriya, but I can just say that the turtles, there are a few tzad mimachmer. First of all, some say that's the original tzav. In the water, there are big turtles, and once they're big turtles, there's enough to make a gzeira. But a little less of a shayla, enough of a shayla is there an issa tzad by slugs, ants. So Shlomo Zalman's logic is definitely stark, but then again, you have Rabbi Yerucham, one of the Rishonim that asks, it's hard to be makel. But I'll tell you something interesting happened this summer. Someone proudly told me he was walking in our campground and there was a rabbit that was injured. I don't know how it got injured, but there was a rabbit laying and basically it was motionless. He was afraid someone's going to step in it. So he picked it up and moved it to the side. He said, I muktzah, tzaba l'chayim, hopefully overrides muktzah. So I didn't want to say anything, but this is a victim of Layam or Tzchasim because he forgot a Gemara. This is the Gemara. Zaken oichayla is still in the Satei the Rabban. And I looked into it and talked to the Mishtabru and Sif cut and test, quoting a Chayot is this exact muscle. On a neves that's sick and can't move, don't pick it up because it's Seder Drabanan and Issa Muktzah. So he made it to a Mishnah and Mr. Brewer said cut and test. What he should have done, he should have moved it to the side, tilted the gufa, move with your foot, don't kick it, move it very gently and carefully. So then you avoid the muktzah and you avoid tzeder. When you move it with your foot, there's no tzeder. You're moving it just out of its area. I always wondered this shaila, a fly in the soup. Everybody's worried about the boira issue. What about the tzeder issue? So the answer probably is that the fact that it doesn't move, but then you're going back to the Namala. You're going back to the issue of Zakum B'chayla. Probably the fact that it's stuck in the soup, it doesn't move in the soup itself, maybe that's like Nitzim B'oimim. There's some type of mice that say that's taking place. A fascinating shaila is mice. Now, it's scary. But the interesting is that I would ask you, can I call the guy to trap the mice because it's getting me very nervous? My neighbor is certainly very nervous. Is it an issue derabbanan? You say, well, mice ain't min anitzah, right? Wrong. One of the Shemayin Shratzim is achbar. So all the Heintige Pais can deal with this, and they say basically that the Torah's achbar was a bigger achbar that they used the skin. But the achbar that grow in dirty areas and garbage and those type of areas is min anitzah. Now sometimes they use it for laboratory testing. That doesn't make it into min anitzah. So the Heintige Pais are pretty convinced. Actually, Kiv Hager already says it, and then Zir Shimshi says it, that the mice of their times is not the Torah's mice. It's all the same mouse, just different species. It would be an aim, but mean a nitzud, and if it's aggravating you, you could have a guy trap it because it's a shvus to shvus b'makom tzayich. Now, lice, interestingly enough, the Tila David and Sifkat Yud Aleph says there's no issa of trapping lice, and that's what Mizalman's raya, that ant is also mutter. But the emphasis is not a raya. Because be'emes, the Mechaber says it, based on the Gemara, that there's no issa of killing lice, even killing the adayim. Lice does not grow from a zach and the keva, it grows from the zeya. So if taka lice is moved from the issa of Akilas Neshama, it's moved from the issa of tzeda. So the raya from lice to ants is a shvacha raya, but trapping lice is no shaila whatsoever. Now I kept on mentioning putting down a trap. Now the trap is a sugya for itself. But in your name, can I put a mouse trap on Shabbos out? Hopefully it'll catch the mouse later. Can I put a fly paper? So first of all, the Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Yud writes emphatically that a trap of any sort is a muktzah. Gomor, he calls it, not machtel issa. It's muktzah machmas gufay and shouldn't be moved. I guess it's not a machtel issa, but the trap is a problem of muktzah. But more fundamentally, is a trap the issa of tzeder. So that's no question about it. If you trap something via dayim or with a net, that's Seder Deraisa. If they put down a trap and the mouse decides to walk into it, it's not my problem. At most, it's a grama. And Toys and Shabbos Yitzayin and Medbeis writes the favors that a trap that traps instantly, if there's such a thing, is Taket Seder Deraisa. But if it traps after a while, it's only a grama that's also midrabban. A person goes fishing. He catches fish with a net. That's a deraisa. He puts out goes a fishing rod and bait, and the fish goes and bites onto the bait. Havlei shlei toicha, you find the Baba Kama. I once saw a big post in someone's office. Someone had a big fish on his fishing rod, and you see the fish was struggling, but it was caught. And it was a Geisha caption. Bottom it says, it got into trouble because it opened its mouth. Perfect advertising for Shmiras Halash. But it's also indicative of the fact that it's a grama. I didn't do it, the fish did it. And Taka the Paiskim say that a trap that doesn't trap instantly, at most it's Rabbanan. And if it's Rabbanan, then you have to know, is there a heta, mamakam tsar, mamak aidiakum? Now, killing, spraying that kills an animal, of course, that's an isagama. There's no heta of mokum tsar like there is by aim and itzah. True story, a camp had a problem with raccoons. They do a lot of damage. So they put one of these traps that they walk in and can't walk out. It slams closed. One Shabbos, it trapped an innocent skunk, which didn't spray. Now, Bach had a lot of rachmanis, so he went and opened the trap and let the skunk out. And the Fruma Malchiach said, you oivan an issa. What is that I do? Don't you know, just like there's an issa of boina and soisa and kaisiv and moichik and toifa and kareya, kaisha mate, ma'avir machaber, there's an issa of trapping and releasing. So that's a real Vayamar Chassid. Who said? Did you find the 40th malacha called untrapping? And especially our understanding, Zil Basatayim, the issa of trapping is moros, is gaining control. There's no issa on control. But it's interesting, the Magen Avram, and Mr. Brewer quotes in the Sivkot and Chavhei, makes a point of saying there's no issa of releasing an animal on Shabbos. And Rav Vosna, in Chelik Gimel Nun Beis, explains there's no such issa. You can't make an issa out of nothing. Now, the Be'er Moshes in Beis Chav Gimel writes, and I guess he doesn't have to have a raya, but we have a raya. Spraying insect repellent is no shayla. He says a person the whole night he can't sleep because of the bugs, and morning he wakes up, he's a gavra katila from all the bites. Use insect repellent. It's not trapping, it's just getting rid of it. Another interesting story happened one summer. Someone was a young uncle was supposed to watch his nephew. And the kid was giving him a run for his money. So he decided he was fed up with it. He put the kid in the back room and locked the door. Is there tzeidah by Adam? Now, a mother wouldn't do that, but an uncle does. So the emes is not thinking, is it tzeidah? Is the person the mina nitzik? Probably not. You're not a sale or buying slaves. And it's a pasuk in the Torah, the Chayil. In the end of Parsha Shlach, by Nichu Oised b'Mishmar, Makayish, they put him into jail. But you can't make a raya. First of all, some Rishonim learned they did it Matzoi Shabbos, and also the Torah said it's done, it's done. But what is a raya brew in Shilam Bates Siv Dalid, the Mechaber says ain't done in the Shabbos, you know how to make mishpat, and therefore you're not a lack of someone on Shabbos because that's a din of a mishpat. So all the earlier Paiskim point out, what about the Yisuf Tzeidah? The teretz is there's no Tzeidah by Adam. Probably because an Adam is not Makabel Morris. And if the Issa Shlita, there's no Issa Shlita. But last but not least, let me share with you a beautiful Ma'aseh Shahaya. Someone was walking in the mountains and he spotted a kan. He spotted a mitzvah derais of Shluach HaKan. Are you allowed to make Shluach HaKan on Shabbos or not? Mitzvah Fakert, maybe it's Muchash mitzvah on Shabbos. So the Chassam Sofer in the Tshuva Simon Kuf discusses this, and he says, since according to the Rambam, to be Mekayim mitzvah, you have to first grab the mother and then shoot and send it away. Most poskim hold just send it away, but the Rambam you have to grab the mother and send it away. So oich me'ah mitzvah, that's the Yisuf Tzeidah deraisa. Now I don't know why he doesn't add this, but the truth is most poskim hold you don't have to grab the mother. But one thing you do have to do, you have to pick up the afreichen. They're babies, they can't fly. But that's a Rambam, and that's the Yishalmi, that even young birds that can't fly is Nisa D'Rabbanan. So, no matter what you do, now, it could be if it's only Bayin, hopefully, if it's not Muktzah, maybe it's Mutter, but the Chassam Sofer does add at the end that what's the special significance Alpi Yisoid, Alpi Kabbalah, with Shluach HaKan, but Tzadikim are so makbid to do it, because if we send the mother bird here, it causes the bird to cry, and that is out of my range, causes the Ima Ilah to cry, and you want to make the Moshe cry on Shabbos, so for that reason alone, don't do it. I couldn't tell it to you all.
Shane, you should tell like you be. I should go to Smith and to Mr. and Mrs. Time Dealer for sponsoring today's share. This was sponsoring a share called Egan Shir Terra 718-851-8651. Want to email ist@yeshivanet.com. Once everyone like to remind our members to be Medea, L'Chaverim, when we started in the share in the past, that the Zman changed to 10 a.m. as well as the locations of 1601 48th Street. Something to speak now.
Just in review, we learned today, Tzeidah is Malacha L'Raisa, even on Yom Tov, no different Yom Tov than Shabbos. As we defined, based on the Chazon Ish and others, Tzeidah means gaining control. The fact that you confine them and you deprive them of freedom, that's not enough. It has to be gaining the shlita, gaining control. And the way the Abin Ezra seems to explain, that's the malacha of it, you change it from a free animal to a useful animal. It's changing the chayfetz, actually the chayfetz itself. Moving it from an area that's open to a more confined area, but you don't have shlita, is mutter. Moving it from a big area to a small area is malachat seder, because now you gain shlita. Trapping something, there's no heta, even though you release it right away. I mean, it's malachat sheichel gufa, but there's still no heta. You have to find a better eitzah. The eitzah is trapping it and leaving an escape route before it's trapped, so that will not be a ma'aseh seder. Closing a door of a cabinet to keep the animal there and it shouldn't escape is the yeshli zor of the Ramah based on the Sefer Trumas. If there's an escape route someplace in the cabinet, or it's a big cabinet, or a person's terrified by the fact that they might get out, there might be tzat mimeko, but basically trapping something in an area that you can't get it, but it's confined, that area. We have the Sefer Trumas is machmir, that would also apply to trapping an insect between the screen and a window. All the same idea, it's machlekes, and the Ramah is choishiv, the same Sefer Trumas, at least in a bechina of yeshli zohar. A fully domesticated animal, cows, horses, goats, that are not moirid, there's no tzeda, it's nitzud v'oimed, even though it's roaming freely. By a semi-domesticated, like some chickens, chayas, cats, in the times of the Ramah, is also, there is an issue of the Rabbanon. The deciding fact is it considered nitzud v'oimed? If it's ready makabel moris. In all animals, even domesticated, there's an issa of muktzah. We're talking about the issa of tzeder. There are some that say our cats and dogs are domesticated, and the heta applies even to non-owners, even to the visitors. If you have a pet, actually an animal that's kept in a cage, and there's a problem of tzeder, so opening and closing the door could be tzeder. So you have to use a double door system or keep the door blocked so it can't escape. A fish, there is an issa tzeder, catching with a net, catching with a fishing rod, and issa d'Rabbanan. On Yom Tov, even tzeder is also, but you want to have fresh fish before Yom Tov, put it into a small pool of water, and Yom Tov allowed to take it out. There's no tzeder, it's nitzud v'oimed. Fish tank is again depending on the size of the fish and the tank, but it's possible it's always nitzud v'oimed. You have to know the mitzias. Insects are only an issa d'Rabbanan. If there's a minor pain, you're allowed to trap it if it's on your body about to bite. A more serious bite, a tsar god, you're allowed to trap it to avoid it coming onto your body to give you that bite. Bees are aimed at mina nitzad because it has to have that freedom to make the honey. Emotional distress, which is machmer, but it seems that if it's a serious emotional distress, then it'll be mutter, even though it's not a physical bite. The eights of a honey, the bees are to take the honey outside if it attracts the bees, hopefully. A bee trap is a problem. Before Shabbos is perfectly mutter. Ticks, taking it off, do it carefully, it's no shayla. Ant, slugs is a machlekes, if it's nitzud v'oimed or not. Turtles is a little more of an issue because there are some turtles that do escape, couldn't run away. A sick rabbit or sick animal is an issa d'Rabbanan. The mokam tsar, balachayim, you're allowed to move muktzah, but you can't trap the animal. A fly in the soup, we're assuming, is already nitzud v'oimed. Mice are aimed at mina nitzud, so there's a heta ayde akum. Lice, there's no issa tzeder, it's nitzud v'oimed. Also, could be it's mufka because it's different type of an insect. Trapping on Shabbos is also, even though it's d'Rabbanan, the hainu you put out a trap and it happens later, but still it's d'Rabbanan. Putting out traps on Erev Shabbos is mut to be din ha-mishnah. Releasing an animal is not seder. We said putting out insect repellent, using insect repellent is mutter. And Simcha pointed out that if it has a scent, you have to worry about moil l'reach b'begodim, so better put it onto the person's body. Trapping a person is not yet also, and Shiluach HaKan should be done after Shabbos.